Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Robin Budish. I'm the Executive Director of Transit Choices. Our organization's mission is to advocate for an equitable, reliable, safe, and efficient multimodal public transit system in Baltimore and beyond. It's hard to believe as we close out this year that we have been working very hard in this arena for over a decade, and we've definitely seen some progress, but there is certainly more work to be done. We have two presentations for you this morning, which we're very excited about. And what I'd like to do without any further ado is to introduce our first guest speaker, Tabia Gamble. Tabia is a transportation planner with WSP USA. Her presentation today is titled Fall 2024, Fall 2024 Raise Project Update. And for those of you that are not familiar with the acronym, that stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. Tabia, good morning. We're delighted to have you with us, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Robin. Excuse me. And thank you folks for having me this morning. I'm very excited to talk to you guys about the Raise Transit Priority Project. I know I have previously presented, so happy to be here this morning and provide an update. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and folks can let me know if they're able to see the presentation. And if so,
Not yet.
okay.
Oh,
All
here
right,
we
let me
go.
know if you
Yes,
guys are
perfect.
able to see.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Feel free to raise hands or ask questions. I know that we'll have some time at the end. But as I said, my name is Tabia Gamble. I am the project manager of the Raise Transit Priority Project on behalf of MTA. So to give folks an overview of the project sort of overall, again, I know I've spoken with many of you before, but the Raise East-West Transit Priority Project is a $50 million investment in transit and pedestrian safety along the CityLink Blue and the CityLink Orange routes. Just to note, this is through a federal grant program, so this is funded both through federal, state, and local funding. And the reason that we're focusing on the CityLink Blue and the CityLink Orange routes is what you'll see here on your screen is our average daily ridership for these two routes is well above the average core bus route. So we're looking at about 9,000 trips daily ridership for both the orange and the blue, whereas our average core bus service is about 3,000. And so that paired with our low on-time performance for both of these routes lets us know that these two routes need some additional support to make sure that our riders are able to get from key destinations such as employment centers, schools, et cetera, on time and reliably. And so there's a couple project goals that we have with this project. There are four primary goals that we're looking to accomplish with this project. And that's first and foremost to improve the travel speeds and reliability of our service along those two routes, to address some of the bus stop accessibility challenges that we're seeing along this corridor, to increase our comfort of our passengers while they're waiting at the buses, and then again, enhance the safety for pedestrians and cyclists that are moving along the corridor. And so the way that that looks sort of paired with the project components is there's a couple different key areas that we're focused on. So we have the roadway and dedicated bus lane improvements, which include part-time peak period, as well as full-time dedicated bus lanes, as well as some bus bulbs in parts of the corridor. And then looking at the lighting, signage, and signals. So that's including things like TSP throughout the corridor and real-time signage. So that's sort of part of our funding and looking at the travel speeds and reliability. And then looking at the bus stop improvements, the pedestrian and bicycle improvements as well. So looking at comfort, accessibility, and then the pedestrian and bicycle safety. So that's how we're sort of breaking down the project funding to meet these different goals. So when we talk about bus stop improvements, this picture here at the top will give you an example of what we're seeing in the corridor. So there's a lot of areas that don't have benches that our passengers are able to wait at. And so this project will be implementing benches, trash cans where feasible, real-time signage to ensure that our passengers are able to know when the next bus is coming, how long they may be waiting, level boarding areas, as well as street trees throughout the corridor. And so this map here, and I know that folks, it's very small, so I don't anticipate folks to sort of dial in. But what this does show is one, how long this corridor is. So the CityLink Blue and the CityLink Orange routes run for about 20 miles. So our corridor for this project is about a 20-mile long corridor, extending from Baltimore County on the west side through Baltimore City, and then back out into Baltimore County on the east side. And so this is really just providing a hints of where some of our bus stop improvements are going to be located throughout the corridor. One thing I will note, and I can get to this at the end as well, is on our website, we do have sort of an interactive map that folks can go in and take a deeper look. So if there's a particular address that you're interested in knowing what improvements are located around, you can go in and sort of look at those different points. But here, what this map is showing is, again, we're proposing several different benches throughout the corridor, proposing lighting throughout the corridor to ensure that folks are able to sort of see better to enhance the safety at night. And then, as I mentioned, also some bus bulbs as well, focused on the east side. In addition to the items that you actually see on the map, we are also going to be planting over 400 trees in different locations throughout the corridor, and we'll have transit signal priority at over 50 traffic lights throughout the corridor, which will really enhance the reliability of our buses to ensure that they are able to sort of move smoothly through the corridor. And then, as I mentioned, real-time signage will be installed at least 20 bus stops. Again, just improving the experience for our customers at each of our bus stops. And then when we talk about pedestrian improvements, really the three things that we're focused on are the ADA compliant curb ramps, repainting the crosswalks to ensure visibility, and then different sidewalk repairs. So here on the left, you'll see some of the examples of some of those non-ADA compliant curb ramps, as well as sidewalks that are just not in safe condition for pedestrians or cyclists to be moving through the corridor. And so enhancing those through repairing those curb ramps to make sure they're ADA compliant, as well as improving the sidewalk conditions. And this gives you sort of an extent on where we're focusing those pedestrian improvements. And so these are focused in some of the higher pedestrian areas, so both along the west side along Edmondson Corridor, as well as along the east side along Fayette. One thing that wasn't on the previous screen is the pedestrian signal. So we have identified 3 areas throughout the corridor that have an even higher percentage of sort of pedestrians that are walking through. And so to enhance their safety, we will be implementing pedestrian signals at those locations. And then moving away from the sort of bus stop and pedestrian improvements into some of the more roadway, the transit priority treatments. I'm going to start on the west side of the project corridor, and then I'll move to the east side in a couple of slides. So along Edmondson Avenue, we are proposing a combination of full-time as well as peak period dedicated bus lanes. So here on your screen, what you're seeing is those red solid blocks are where we're proposing full-time dedicated bus lanes. And then where you see the sort of dashed lines is the peak period dedicated bus lanes. And as you'll notice, those are primarily in the residential areas, as in our previous rounds of feedback, there were a lot of concerns of taking sort of overnight and weekend parking. And so the peak period dedicated bus lanes in those residential areas will maintain overnight and weekend parking for residents, while also enhancing our bus service during those most important times of the day. And so we anticipate that these bus lanes will save riders 1 to 3 minutes for a faster and more reliable transit trip. We do understand that there could be general traffic impacts in these areas. But again, it's sort of making sure that we're weighing out the pros and the cons of each. So, as I mentioned, some of those dedicated bus lanes will only operate during the peak period, which is also very similar to the conditions that residents see now. So, there is sort of peak period parking restrictions in several areas along Edmondson Avenue. And so, for residents, this won't be much of a change. It'll be more of a change in the way those lanes are used. In addition to these transit priority treatments along Edmondson Avenue, we will also be adding several benches, real-time signs, and then there will be several ADA improvements as well. And so here, the pictures on the bottom just give you an example of what those different dedicated bus lanes will look like. So the red painted lanes are for the full-time dedicated bus lanes, and those peak period dedicated bus lanes will be similar to the photo on the left, where it's just marked by lane markings and signage. Moving a little bit further east along the corridor, so focused in Franklin and Mulberry. So when we were doing our traffic analysis, as well as a lot of outreach to our transit riders, we were noticing that there weren't a lot of delays in this portion of the corridor. And so with that, we will be maintaining free flow traffic. So that means that the transit buses will be moving along with regular vehicle traffic in this area, but we will be implementing some ADA improvements as well as lighting in different portions of this corridor. This is also an area that we're working very closely with our project partners, Baltimore City DOT, as they also have several projects that are in this area. And so it's just an area to sort of continue to coordinate. And then as we move further east to Fayette Street, so really right now focused on the Fayette Street and President Street intersection, which is where we're seeing a lot of the delay in this area. And so we're proposing a queue jump in this area, which will save riders 1 to 2 minutes of a faster and more reliable trip where we're seeing the most delay. Again, similar to the dedicated bus lanes, there could be general traffic impacts, but a bit smaller. So looking at 0 to 2 minutes maybe of slower traffic. Oh, sorry about that.
Mm.
And so what the queue jump does is it allows for the buses to move ahead of the signal. So it allows buses to have a special sort of traffic signal that gives them a head start westbound. And on this next graphic here, you'll see how that will operate in real time. And so you'll see that it allows the bus to sort of get out ahead of traffic prior to regular vehicle traffic moving on the green light. And again, this is sort of accompanied by a short stint of a dedicated bus lane just to make sure that the buses are able to get up to the signal. In addition to the queue jump, we will be adding several benches, real-time sign information, as well as ADA upgrades in this area. And then as we continue further east, once you get to East Fayette Street, looking at the Wolf and Washington area to further east, we are looking at bus bulbs or curb extensions as the transit priority treatment there. So here you'll see on the graphic what a bus bulb is or a curb extension is. Really, it's extending the sidewalk out further into the street. So what it'll create is an inline bus stop. And that will allow our buses to no longer struggle or wait to sort of re-enter traffic, saving our transit riders up to 2 minutes for a more reliable transit trip. It also increases the safety for pedestrians because it reduces the crossing distance. So it serves as sort of a traffic calming measure in this area of the corridor where we're seeing a lot of pedestrians as well as some safety issues with the buses merging in and out of traffic. It also provides additional accessible bus stop waiting space. Again, as the curb is sort of extended out, there's more space for benches, trash cans, lighting, etc. It also formalizes the full-time parking in this area. So when we were doing our analysis, we did do a parking inventory, and in this portion of the corridor, it was really necessary to have more full-time parking, both during the day and at night. And so these bus bulbs really do formalize the parking in this area. Similar to other transit priority treatments, there could be general traffic impacts of up to sort of 5 minutes of slower traffic as the buses are boarding or alighting passengers, but really a safety improvement as well as improving the reliability of our transit overall. In addition to the bus bulbs in this area, we'll be adding several benches as well as addressing several ADA improvements as well. And again, here is just a picture that's in Baltimore of sort of what a bus bulb actually looks like. So here you see the sidewalk is extended, and then further up, it sort of formalizes those parking spaces. Um, And then moving into the bicycle investment. So, as a part of when we went for this grant application, the focus for bike improvements was really improving the connection from West Baltimore Mark Station to the downtown area. And so, with that, this project will implement new side paths that will connect to the existing side paths that are along Franklin and Mulberry right now. So, enhancing that connection from West Baltimore Mark to the downtown area. This is, as I noted, it's a side path, so it is off of the street. It's not going to be something like the green painted lanes that you see in other parts of the city, but rather this is a completely sort of separated bike facility. And then to give folks an understanding of the schedule and sort of where we are. So, as I mentioned, we've been doing a lot of outreach and engagement. This project did start in about the spring or fall of 2022. So we did a lot of early engagement. We've done several rounds of outreach and sort of have revised our proposed improvements through those rounds of outreach. So where we are now is sort of moving into the winter of 2024. Where we will sort of finalize our design plans based on the feedback that we've gotten through this round of outreach. And then in sort of the summer of next year, we'll move into the construction. So this does note sort of the overall construction timeline, just to let folks know that when we say construction is starting in summer of 2025, that doesn't mean immediately that you'll see shovels in the ground. And so what I'll get to on our next steps is our plans for the next couple of months, again, are to finalize our design plans. So we're finalizing our federal grant agreement and then continuing to do community engagement to make sure that those finalized plans are in agreement with what the community, what our advocates are pushing for. And then in the summer of next year, we'll come back out to the community to sort of let folks know what to expect and anticipate in terms of the construction timeline and the construction plan. And so with that, I will open it up to questions. If there's anything that's in the chat, Robin or folks have their hand raised.
Thanks, Tabia. Would you be able to take the presentation off the screen just so I could see the full gallery?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. So during the Q&A session, you may either raise your hand or you may put a message in the chat. And what I would like to do is to sort of kick off this session with a question. And that is, would you sort of explain the difference between, you were talking about peak time lanes versus dedicated lanes? I understand the peak, but for those that would love a little clarification, would you be able to respond to that, please?
Absolutely. So the difference between the peak period dedicated bus lanes and the full-time dedicated bus lanes is just going to be the time in which they are in use. So when you're looking at that screen of the solid red dotted line, so those will be painted red, and those will be 24 hours, sort of 7 days a week, dedicated bus lanes. When you're talking about the peak period dedicated bus lanes, that is going to be just in the morning peak periods and in the evening peak period. During the week. So sort of Monday through Friday, the current conditions that are out there right now of the peak period parking restrictions are, I believe, like 7 to 10 a.m. In the morning going eastbound, and then like 3 to 6 p.m. in the evening going westbound. So it'll be similar to that, where there's just peak periods during the day in which those lanes will be dedicated transit use, and then outside of that, they'll be used for parking.
Thank you. And with regard to funding, do you feel pretty confident that there's funding, throughout, until the completion of the project, given this current transportation funding landscape? that we are in today. I just was sort of, we'd love to know, where this project sits.
Yeah, so being that this is a grant that we have already been awarded, we are pretty confident. And so we are working to finalize our grant agreement with the federal government over the next couple of weeks. And so we feel confident and we feel good that this project will continue moving forward.
Excellent. I don't see any hands raised or anything in the chat at this time, but should we receive questions, which happens often after presentations, I will certainly, forward them to you. So Tabia, we want to congratulate you and your team. This is, an extensive project. You presented a very, detailed recap of where you are, and we're very appreciative of that. So thank you so much for your time, for your commitment and dedication. And as always, please let us know how Transit Choices may continue to support your efforts. We're happy to amplify what you're doing through our listserv and just support, or I should say provide support, in terms of whatever you need for this important project. So thank you again for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Robin. I appreciate it. I always enjoy presenting here. And I will come off of screen, but I will remain in the chat. So if folks have questions that they think of, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll also drop our website so folks can go and take a look at our website where there's additional presentations. You can see our previous presentations there, as well as access the interactive map that I mentioned. I'll also drop our email, and if folks do have questions after this meeting. So thank you and have a great day, everyone.
Our next guest presenter is Paul Sturm. Paul is the campaign manager for Better Transit Now. He's also the chair of the Downtown Residents Advocacy Network. Paul's presentation today is titled Better Transit Now and the Transit Riders Rally, a long overdue campaign for Baltimore's transit riders. Paul, good morning. The floor is yours. Paul, you're on mute. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. Yeah, you must be having some audio. I'm so sorry. We cannot hear you.
Paul, that we can hear you sort of sound like the squirrel. So maybe you want to come back, go out and come back in again.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, this happens from time to time.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I couldn't even hear any sound, actually.
I just heard little bits and pieces, and I sort of know that squirrel sound at this point. So.
Well, we'll give Paul a moment while he regroups and rejoins us.
So I just, while we're waiting for Paul, is the RAISE project, is that being run by people? Are they at MTA or are they a separate organization?
Yeah, so the Race Transit Priority Project is an MTA project.
Okay.
So we are the grant recipients of the federal grant award, as well as we are managing the project at MTA.
Thank you.
We are partnered. I was going to say we are partnered with Baltimore City DOT, so they are partners on the project as well. But MTA is sort of the primary project manager and grant recipient.
Robin, can you hear me?
I can. Perfect. Excuse me one second. Klaus, did you have a question with respect to the RAISE presentation?
Yes, I realized from the timeline that the total timeline was from 2022 to 27 for paint on the road, curb modifications, traffic signal modifications. It seems to me that one should be able to install those things within 12 months or so and not 5 years. And especially since the same corridor was looked at before. So the analysis as to where the non-ADA compliance is and all that has been done. I did it once in, I don't know, 2012 or something. And so I just wonder, is there any thought within the MTA to make these projects a lot faster?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The Raised Transit Priority Project is looked at as sort of our midterm or medium-term project. So several times a year, we do sort of an analysis on our bus stops. And then this is sort of looked at as a medium-term project. So it does take a little bit of time, sort of making sure that we're engaging the community and that the community has buy-in is one of the pieces that's been very important. But we do also understand that we're trying to get improvements as quickly as possible. So speeding up the process when we can is definitely something that MTA does consistently look at and work towards.
Thank you, Tabia. So I'm going to reintroduce Paul Sturm. His presentation today is titled Better Transit Now in the Transit Riders Rally, a long overdue campaign for Baltimore's transit riders. So Paul, looks like the technical issues have been solved. We're happy to have you with us. Good morning.
Thanks, Robin. Happy to be with you in Transit Choices. We're all at the mercy of technology, right?
Yeah, right.
So apologize for the glitch. And let me add one other thing to my intro. I have been a regular or a frequent MTA rider for 17 years now, since I first came to Baltimore in 2007, left my car back in Milwaukee. And I calculated not so long ago, I have probably had ridden MTA over 2,000 times now, individual trips on bus, light rail, metro, and MARG. So I am a veteran, and I think I might even be due for a Purple Heart, given some of the scars I've experienced. So thanks for the chance to be with all of you this morning. I'm really excited to talk about our Better Transit Now campaign, and in particular, the Transit Riders Rally we're organizing during the legislative session, and that will be on Tuesday, February 4th. So I'm going to share my screen. I put a PowerPoint together. We'll take you through that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions, and feedback, and so forth. So give me a moment to screen share here. It's saying request has been sent. Multiple presenters can share. I assume that means I have permission, Robin?
You do. You are a co-host.
Okay. So let's try that.
I'll do it again.
Okay, there we go. Okay, share. You are screen sharing. Let me get my PowerPoint up. Okay, it's trying to, I had it open before we began. It's reopening now.
Okay.
Technology gods are not making it easy this morning. There we go. Looks like it's up. Okay, so I want to, let's see, do slideshow. Okay, it's opening the slideshow. Just need to be in presentation mode here.
We can see that. We can see the cover slide, Paul.
Okay, are you seeing it full screen?
Not full screen, but we can easily read it. And then we've got the the slides, individual slides to the left. Okay. So if for some reason you're not able to do full screen,
You should be able to do that.
Okay.
So we've got slideshow. And probably need to do one other thing here, right? To begin.
Yeah, Paul, I think if you click slideshow again,
Right.
Okay.
and then if you go right down the first one under that from beginning, yep. And then if you hover over back under the drop down.
From beginning. Oh, there we go. Right there.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, there we go. It's going full screen.
Well, maybe you want to begin just sort of talking us through what we're about to see.
Okay, well let's do this. Oh, there we go. Looks like it's full screen now. Okay,
Great.
so that's the intro. So let me move on here. Okay, so the origin of Better Transit Now is this. A year and a half ago, June of 2023, Governor Moore announced the Red Line Revival, which I'm guessing everyone on this call, certainly everyone involved with the campaign, was happy about. But what concerned us was the media narrative, the following day and then going forward, seemed to say, hallelujah, the Red Line is back. We solved Baltimore's transit problems. We can move on to other things. And our reaction to that was best case scenario, even if all the pieces are put back together, we're looking at sometime in the next decade, in the 2030s, before the first light rail car is running and the first people are boarding and able to take advantage of that. And those of us who ride the system, and I'm assuming many of you on on Zoom today understand this, know that the status quo, the current situation is simply not acceptable. We cannot wait, 8 to 10 years, maybe even until the middle of the next decade, to have better transit here in Baltimore and the Baltimore area. We need better transit now. So that's the origin of the campaign. And better transit now means three things. It means reliability, it means frequency, and it means accountability. And Robin, I think you said in your intro, it truly is a long overdue campaign for Baltimore transit riders. So what do we mean by reliability? Our metric is a minimum 90% bus and rail on-time performance and a minimum of 90% bus and rail on time, actually showing up. One of the problems, and you'll see some updated data on this in just a moment, but one of the problems, again, as those of us who ride the system know, is there's a schedule, but sometimes the buses don't show up at all. They're not just late, they don't show up at all, which causes people to wait a significant amount of time beyond the time the bus is supposed to show up. And we know the problems with the light rail that's happening there as well. So reliability and those two metrics are really important. Frequency is important to us, where our metric is 10 to 15 minute weekday bus and rail service, evenings and weekends, 20 to 30 minute service. And this is important because downtown, for example, we have a lot of downtown residents who have come to Baltimore from cities and metropolitan areas where they have used public transportation. People have come from Boston and Philly and DC and Chicago and other places. And what they're telling us is that they would love to use transit here in Baltimore, but because the service is not frequent and often not reliable, they are holding on to their cars. So we got a lot of people downtown, and I know throughout the city as well, that would happily trade in their automobile, or a Charm card or a transit app if they knew transit service were frequent and reliable. So that's important to us. And accountability is important as well. And there's been some misunderstanding about this. I want to be clear. This is not about a particular person. This is about a structure, a culture, a system that from everything we can see from the outside and what people who have been inside that system tell us, there simply isn't the kind of accountability that we need. So our metric there is we're asking for an outside assessment and an objective assessment that looks at every aspect of MTA with recommendations. And then we would ask MTA to implement those recommendations with funding, of course, over the next year. And a couple of examples of where the lack of accountability has impacted the system. I'm sure everyone recalls about a year ago now, the light rail shut down. That didn't happen because of one decision at one time. There were a series of decisions. So the question is, where was the accountability? Who was held accountable for the series of decisions that, number one, led to the light rail being completely shut down a year ago after a fire? And right now, as many of you probably know, just about at any given time, between 1/2 and 2/3 of the light rail cars are not functioning, which leads to delays and overcrowding, things of that nature. So again, where is the accountability for that? And some of you may recall the story of the Baltimore batter a few months ago following one of the Orioles playoff games when a shuttle bus was running to ease the light rail overcrowding, and instead of going to Cromwell south, it went the other way, Cromwell north. So something was askew in the training and the communications there. Again, where is the accountability for a decision that inconvenienced a whole lot of people during that time? So here's the current MTA data. It's updated every month. So what you'll see if you look on the left and the right, it shows MTA performance September through November. And you'll see bus, light rail, subway, bus on-time performance, not even 2/3, 65%. Light rail and subway on-time performance, a little over 50%. If you look to the right, you'll see some real progress, and I want to give MTA credit for this. They're now up to, over the last 3 months, 91% of the scheduled bus runs being made. So that is significant improvement, and that meets our minimum goal of 90%. Light rail and subway, not there. Light rail 82% over the past 3 months. Subway 67%. So progress with bus scheduled runs being made in particular, but yet if you look to the left, not really reflected in on-time performance. So if you're out there at 8 o'clock in the morning and you've got a bus scheduled to take you to your workplace, or if you're a student, take you to school, chances are your bus is not going to show up on time and you may be late for work or school. So that's our metric. That's the current situation for on-time performance, which is why our metric of 90% is so important. Okay, and where does MTA and our current system rate compared to our peer systems around the country? Well, Central Maryland Transit Alliance did a study about a year ago, and we are third from last. They looked at 19 systems, peer systems around the country, and you'll see that we are third to last. Not a place where you want to be. And MTA's conclusion after looking at all the data from Baltimore and the peer systems is MTA ended 2023 graded out as D+. Not the grade that riders want to see, and I'm sure not the grade that MTA wants to see as well. So that's where we were a year ago. Again, some progress in terms of the vehicles actually making their runs, but still a long ways to go in terms of on-time performance. And the last thing I'll say about where we are right now, this is not just about our campaign, it's not just about making things better for transit riders, it's about Baltimore as a whole. And if you look at this data, you'll see these are the major cities up and down the East Coast. During the last decade, census data shows that the only major East Coast city losing population is Baltimore, 35,000 population decrease, while our peer cities, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, DC, Atlanta, are gaining population. And this trend goes back not just the last decade, but going back a couple of decades before. And one of the fundamental differences between those cities and Baltimore is none of them, of course, have a perfect public transportation system, but they have a connected, comprehensive public transportation system beyond what Baltimore has right now. So this is not just about making things better for current transit riders, potential transit riders, folks who would like to ride transit if we had frequent, reliable service, but the competitiveness and the quality of life in Baltimore as a whole. We want to give people reasons to move to Baltimore, to stay in Baltimore, not leave Baltimore because the transit system is not reliable. So that leads us to what we're planning right now as a major action in the campaign. It's the first ever Transit Riders Rally for Better Transit Now. It will be February 4th at the Maryland State House. It's also Transit Equity Day, which celebrates the birth of Rosa Parks. So we're especially pleased to have it on that day. And the rally will take place in two parts. There'll be about an hour of people gathering on Lawyers Mall in front of the State House. There'll be speeches by members of the Maryland legislature, other elected officials, including Baltimore City public officials. Transit riders will be speaking, sharing their experiences. And after the rally, people will be meeting with elected officials, in particular delegates, senators, key staff people. We're anticipating a delegation will be meeting with not the governor himself, some of his key staff people, telling their stories, in particular their hardships as it relates to what they've experienced riding transit in Baltimore and the Baltimore region, why they couldn't always get to work on time or school, why they may have lost jobs, so on, why seniors haven't been able to get to medical appointments on times, etc. And the reason we think this is so important, and legislators themselves are telling us this is important, is that up till now, transit riders have not been very visible in Annapolis during the legislative session. They've been voiceless, they've been faceless, they haven't had a chance to tell their stories. So that's what we're going to be doing on February 4th. We're going to be making transit riders visible so that legislators and the governor will see and feel their presence, will hear their voices and their stories. And we really believe that will then be the framework going forward as the legislature considers, what we talked about earlier, and we're all aware of, the need for a much greater investment in Baltimore and the Baltimore region's public transportation system. No, Vince Lombardi is not going to speak at the rally, but he's inspiring us. So one of the things he said, and other coaches over the years have said this as well, the best defense is a good offense. So this rally and our campaign is all about going on offense. Yes, we've got to play defense. We have to stop the cuts that the governor proposed in his draft budget, but that is simply not good enough. We need to be loud and clear that status quo is just not acceptable. We need to move the ball forward. We need to invest in creating the kind of public transportation system here that our peer cities, not only up and down the East Coast, but across the country have. So, Vince Lombardi, from his grave, continues to inspire and motivate our campaign. And here's what's so important to keep in mind. We know, as we've talked about earlier on the call, this is a challenging budget year. But we also know that government always finds money for what it values. And I'm a sports fan, so don't go hating on me when you hear this. But as you probably know, the legislature found $1.2 billion, $1.2 billion for the Orioles and the Ravens to, to upgrade their stadiums. Found $400 million, almost $500 million, to rebuild Pimlico. And as you probably know, the state of Maryland, through the Stadium Authority, is going to operate Pimlico going forward. And the reason I stress that is Pimlico really only matters one day a year. Yes, I know the history and the tradition of the Preakness, but that's one day a year. Baltimore area residents rely on transit 365 days a year. And our message is it's long past time to value transit and the people who use transit and would like to use transit in the Baltimore region. And what you need to know, in case some of you on the call are not aware of this, other states, including our peer states or sister states, if you will, in the Northeast Corridor, have created new transit funding. Massachusetts, the legislature passed the Millionaire's Fair Share tax a couple of years ago. It was then approved in a statewide referendum, and that tax during its first year has brought in $2.4 billion. That's $2.4 billion for transportation and education. And we know that, of course, education, there's a continuing need to invest in education in Maryland as well. $2.4 million, just the first year of that tax in Massachusetts. New Jersey, this past year, the legislature passed a corporate transit fee signed by the governor, and that new fee, that new revenue, is projected to bring in $1 billion a year, specifically and exclusively for New Jersey transit. That's $1 billion a year in new money for public transportation in the state of New Jersey. And Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro recently reallocated highway funding, moved it to transit. That money is all going to SEPTA, which is the Philadelphia Regional Authority. So our point is, if our sister states up in the Northeast Corridor can find new money for public transportation, we believe Maryland can as well. And we started with Governor Moore's announcement a year and a half ago about the red line, and we want to conclude with Governor Moore. Among the things he said is that you cannot have a thriving Maryland if you don't have a thriving Baltimore. And for Baltimore to thrive, we need a comprehensive, reliable, frequent public transportation system. And what's so important to keep in mind is, and sometimes I think it's lost in the conversation, the frustration that many of us have, is we have not only a Democratic governor in West Moore, we have an overwhelmingly Democratic General Assembly, state legislature. We have Democrats have super majorities in both houses. And what we need is for Maryland Democrats to act like Democrats. We know the Republican playbook. The Republican playbook is transit, public transportation is not a priority, doesn't merit funding. The states that I mentioned, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, like Maryland, all have Democratic governors. Not all of them have supermajorities in the legislature, but have a significant Democratic presence in the legislature. So we need Maryland Democrats to act like Democrats and value public transit in the state's major city and population center, and make the kinds of investments that up till now they haven't. And to conclude, a couple of other comments from Governor Moore over the years, which suggests that he should be hopefully in the front of the line supporting transit. You cannot have economic mobility without physical mobility. And of course, we need to be sure that no one is left behind. So I thank you, Robin. Thank you and the group for the chance to be with you this morning. This is some important information in terms of learning more about our campaign and the rally. Our website is bettertransitnow.org. Would encourage all of you to check it out if you haven't already. People can sign up for the rally. And let me just add one other thing. We have 5 buses. We reserved 5 buses that will be free for rally participants. They will be picking people up at various locations around Baltimore, taking them to the rally and bringing them back. You can sign up to attend the rally and to reserve a seat on one of those buses on our Eventbrite page. You'll see the link there. And if you want more information or have questions, feedback for us, suggestions, please reach out to us at advocate@bettertransitnow.org. So I will stop sharing. I would love to hear questions and comments. And just real quick before we begin, I know Anna Ellis from our campaign team is on the call. Anna, do you want to share anything? Is there anything I may have left out that you want to share with the group before we go to Q&A?
No, I think you covered it. I think the only thing I will mention is that so far we're pretty sure that the buses will be at Mondawmin, Camden Yards, and the Safeway in Canton. But we're going to have 5 buses. We haven't quite figured out the other ones. But Robin, can we get that information to you and you can distribute it to your Transit Choices work? Your Transit Choices list once we figure all those details out.
Yes, of course.
Okay, thank you. So,
yeah, we'll have 5 locations in different parts of the city. As Anna mentioned, we've already identified 3 of them. I don't know if you mentioned Camden Yards. Camden Yards will be kind of our downtown pickup. We'll be in southeast Baltimore, West Baltimore, Mondawmin, and we're looking for sites in the northern part of the city in the area, probably northeast and northwest Baltimore. So I know time is a little tight, so let's get to Q&A, Robin, if we could. So I see,
Sure.
Brian, you've got your hand up.
Brian?
Hey there, good morning. My name is Brian Llewellyn. I am a new Baltimore resident, moving from Indianapolis, Indiana. I appreciate your presentation, Paul. I'm just trying to get myself oriented here a bit to the funding landscape and what some of the conversations have been. I appreciate that you included some example funding sources that other nearby states have recently implemented for dedicated transit. And I'm curious if you all have are privy to any of the kind of conversations about what might be politically feasible and kind of what progress has been made on estimating what different options could net in terms of total revenue.
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. What I can tell you is what we have heard in our conversations with members of the Maryland General Assembly, including people in leadership positions. There are lots of conversations, private conversations taking place right now, leading into the session, where legislators are considering in a serious way potential new sources of revenue. Everyone's aware there is a budget deficit, a projected budget deficit in Maryland right now. We need new revenue. No one is, at this moment able to say anything publicly because those conversations are taking place behind the scenes. Speculating, but I think with confidence that the governor and his people are involved in those conversations as well. So this will be new revenue, potential new revenue will be on the table during the next legislative session. And let me add that we're also working in coordination with a group called Fair Share Maryland, which some of you may be familiar with. They are also eager to put on the table and advance new revenue sources for the issues that we all care about, not only transit, but education and human services. So there's just lots of activity and lots of conversations revolving around the need for more revenue. And I suspect, Brian, once the governor introduces his budget, which I believe will be, the second week of the General Assembly, I think he has to do it by January 15th, things will become public and there will be serious conversation about not just the need for greater revenue, but looking at the various possibilities for that. And again, I come back to there are models and precedents in our sister states in the Northeast Corridor and other parts of the country So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's simply a matter of looking at what's out there and figuring out what's going to be best here in Maryland.
Brian, hi, this is Robin Budish speaking. I also wanted to piggyback on what Paul just shared. There are several, entities, organizations, the old expression, it takes a village, really fighting hard and advocating for more money for public transit. Two of the agencies or entities rather that are doing, they're tasked to do work in that arena would be the BRTC, the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. They meet monthly. Those meetings are open to the public. At every meeting, MTA Administrator Holly Arnold does a very full presentation on where the MTA stands on, a number of different factors. Also, there is the Train Commission, Transportation Revenue and Infrastructure. They are tasked with also looking at finding dedicated streams of funding for public transit that are sustainable. I am honored to mention the fact that I have been invited to serve on the advisory board for that commission. And we are going to be looking really hard at, other, financial models, how we can come up with sustainable funding. So, Brian, I put my contact information in the chat. If you would like to kind of join our listserv and be kept up to date on what is going on in the transportation funding arena, happy to share that information with you.
And Robin, real quick, let me add, and this also responds to your question, Brian. It's really a matter of political will. What we need to do, and what this campaign's all about, what our rally is all about, is helping to create the political will so that our elected officials, our elected representatives of the General Assembly, and of course the governor himself, are motivated to prioritize public transportation and make the kinds of investments that we need to make, the state of Maryland needs to make in the Baltimore region's public transit system. And shame on us, frankly, if we're not able to create the political will to do that, because we know how important this is. We know how many people are impacted on a daily basis because they can't always get to work or school, medical appointments, recreation, so on and so forth on time. So the more people that show up on February 4th in Annapolis, and we're anticipating at least a couple of hundred, hopefully more people there, the greater I think we can motivate members of the legislature and the governor to find the political will to make the investments in this city, this region's public transportation that up till now, we haven't made. So that's what this campaign's all about. And Brian, we'd love to have you be involved in some way. So hopefully we can connect after the call.
Thank you, Paul. And to everyone, what we'd like to do is to share an exciting announcement from Transit Choices before we conclude for today. And that is, for those of you that are familiar, we have produced two very successful brochures in the past. One was called Quick Hits, kind of, low-hanging fruit, low-cost, high-impact projects that could be done in the next 5 years to improve our public transit system. The second was a transit vision with very specific ideas on how we could improve Baltimore's transit system. And my announcement today on behalf of our organization is that we are sending to the printers, hopefully today, our third brochure, which is titled A Vision for a Great Regional Transit System. We're going to talk about what it looks like. We're going to talk about what it costs to fund it. We're going to talk about, we can either invest, that word has come up several times throughout both of the presentations today, or whether we can sort of accept and maintain the status quo. So be on the lookout for that. Regarding our meeting calendar, we're working hard on bringing you the best and the brightest for 2025 in terms of, new presentations, updated information. So when that becomes available, we'll certainly share it. But, as Jimmy Rouse always says, all of these meetings would not be possible without your incredible support and your ongoing interest, in the work that not just Transit Choices, but other transit advocacy organizations are doing to really improve and expand our public transit system. We're grateful, we're appreciative, and look forward to continued hard work and commitment to make better public transit a reality in the near future. We'd like to wish you and yours a really wonderful, peaceful holiday season. And you can always reach out to us in between these monthly meetings for any questions, comments, or to provide feedback. Before I say goodbye for today, Jimmy, did you want to provide any remarks?
I think you pretty much said it, Robin. Just I want to thank the presenters. I thought both presentations were informative and excellent. And as always, I want to thank the audience because y'all's participation is actually a big step in advocating for better transit because it enables us to attract the top people in the transportation arena to present to the public, you all, and to have time to answer your questions. And they appreciate the opportunity. And without you, it wouldn't be possible. So thank you all for attending.
For those of you who don't know Jimmy Rouse, he is a Transit Choices co-founder and a very active and engaged individual in advocating for better public transit. So with that said, have a wonderful day. Thank you all, and we will remain in close touch. Bye-bye.